So hello everyone, I'm Tofu, we're on the Happy Home Paradise DLC, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So I'm going to be doing a few Happy Home Paradise designs based on countries that I've travelled to. So we're going to run off to the first house, and obviously jump into it. So, let's go! So I've wanted to do something like this in Happy Home Paradise for a while, and I'm lucky and privileged enough that I can say I've been to quite a lot of countries and managed to see a fair bit of the world. I think it's about 16 different countries if memory serves, and that's not including the UK because obviously that's where I live. But it wouldn't be a Tofu build or a Tofu video if I didn't start with Japan. It's my favourite place to visit. I've been 4 different times and 3 times on my own and then once with Mumsy. It's got some absolutely fantastic memories attached to just Japan and me being there. So there's quite a lot of places I've been to within Japan, so Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto and Okinawa, and very specifically Naha within Okinawa. But I've also done day trips to places like Himeji, Nara and Miyajima Island, Shimizu, just to name a few. And yeah, I wanted this build to kind of resemble, I guess, like somewhat of a semi-rural, kind of suburban setting, because as much as I love being in Tokyo and Osaka, and obviously just the major cities, I just really feel a lot more of a peaceful connection with these kind of suburban and a bit more residential, I guess, areas. You get a lot more feel for kind of everyday living in Japan, and just what most people generally feel like. And yeah, I really like to walk around and just kind of soak in the atmosphere and take in all the kind of different vibes and everything like that. And so things like the semi-rural or, like I said, suburban kind of areas, I just kind of click with a lot more. And so that's what I'm trying to recreate here. I've obviously gone with the somewhat traditional Asian house and tried to make it look kind of Japanesey, just so it fits the scene I'm trying to go for. And this might be a silly note, but obviously if you see any codes that you do like, all the creator codes will be in the description below. So obviously if you see something you like and you want to check the creator out, yeah, feel free to just pop down below and yeah, like I said, check it all out. So I guess very specifically this is kind of loosely based on Shimizu, but Shimizu is actually a port town, and I have actually built a completely different island based very roughly on Shimizu before. It was my second ever island that I did, and I have done a tour of it very early on in my channel, but I digress. I was going for, again, that kind of residential area, so I've tried to make it look like a street, but I want it to be somewhat kind of filled with nature, so there are a few trees, weeds and bushes popped up. I have a few rocks and things that I place, and yeah, I just wanted to make it look busy, but not overly busy, you know? But I do think Japanese builds are somewhat easy in Animal Crossing New Horizons just because of the amount of items and things they give you that fit that kind of bill. Obviously, once the game first came out, everyone was building a small section, if not dedicating a massive area of their island to Japan. And you've got things like the hearth that I don't use in this build because it would just be a bit silly. But yeah, there's a lot of decent items that really work. Hopefully you're getting the same kind of vibes if you've been lucky enough to go to Japan yourself, or obviously if you watch anything on YouTube and things like that and you've seen these kind of places. There are some amazing moments that I have attached to my visits to Japan. So it was the first country that I ever travelled to without my family, and later on my my travels, it was actually the first country that I ever visited on my own. So that was kind of cool. I managed to see a Japanese rock band that at the time was my favourite band. It's probably very high up there still. But when I discovered them, they had already broken up, so I was very late to that party. But then years and years down the line, they did a one-off special kind of concert, and I ended up booking tickets for it before I even got tickets to fly to Japan or sorted accommodation. Basically, I wanted to make sure I was going to that concert, and I got the tickets, so I then booked all the travelling arrangements and everything like that, and yeah, that concert was absolutely amazing. And it still baffles people to hear that I flew the other side of the world just to see a band, essentially. But there you go, that's what you do, you know, it's a one-off time thing, so I was determined that I was going to go see it. And probably the best memory that I have of Japan is that I proposed to Mumsy there. So I know that someone has definitely asked how we got engaged, and I guess I'll tell that here, because why not? But we went to Osaka, and there's a place called Osaka Skytree. So it's a big tower, and it has like observation deck, and there's a little area which you can put these different like love heart padlocks or couple padlocks, and yeah, just make sure that it's all kind of neat, but it's in a dedicated space, so it's not causing any kind of structural issues to like things like bridges like it does in Italy or France. But anyway, as I had Mumsy putting this padlock on, I then got the ring out of my pocket, and I wanted to make sure that it was perfectly aligned in the box, so I opened it, made sure, and then snapped the box shut. Now what I didn't realise is those boxes have like a spring hinge on them, so it made a audible snap. And yeah, me and Mumsy then remember this bit different, but she seems to think that she like shot bolt upright or like to attention, and she definitely noticed. I can't deny that, but I think is a lot more relaxed. And then yeah, I proposed to her on the observation deck of this tower with the sun setting, and I knew that she didn't want any major kind of attention, but there was a family just kind of lingering, and I had to kind of use my mind powers to get them to shoo, essentially, because I know Mumsy didn't really want a massive fuss being made, and if you had anyone kind of watching, they would obviously start clapping or things like that. They would want to take photos, and I know she didn't want that. But obviously she said yes, and we are married now. And yeah, it's just an amazing experience that I had in Japan. And then I'm pretty sure we went to the cafe that was in that the Osaka Skytree, and we had just ice cream and coffee and things, and yeah, it was just a really pleasant day, besides the fact that obviously I just got engaged to the woman I love. So we're just getting towards the end of me doing the Japanese street build, so I'm just kind of doing the set dressing, and like I said, I wanted it to be semi-rural kind of feel, so there's plenty of trees, bushes, and obviously weeds and things like that, but I still wanted it to feel somewhat, lived in and suburban. So there's the street lamps, obviously you've got the cars and the bike, but little things that obviously nod to the traditional side of Japan as well. So you've got the stone, the stone tablet, I believe it's called, just on the far left. Obviously I've already said that I wanted the house to look somewhat traditional, but also the modernities as well, as so the telegraph pole, or is it the pylon? I forget what that's called. But then moving on to the next build, and I wanted this to very much contrast with the traditional Japanese build. So initially I wanted to build a scene that kind of inspired by Rome in Italy, obviously. But I ended up finding these tiles, and to be honest, I got a lot more kind of Mediterranean-y vibes, even though obviously Italy is within the Mediterranean area. But this ended up being a lot more like inspired by Prague in the Czech Republic. And me and Mumsy went there for, I think it was just 3 days. It was a long weekend, but yeah, it was a really cool experience. It was very hot at the time, so I think it was roughly around 40 degrees C, which again, I don't deal in Fahrenheit, so you'll have to forgive me. Maybe Editor Tofu can throw what it is up on screen as to Fahrenheit versus Celsius. But yeah, I remember at one point we were visiting the Prague Zoo, and yeah, Mumsy wasn't feeling very well, and I think she was on the verge of having a heat stroke because it was just that warm, which wasn't cool. But we managed to get her into the main building in the zoo. She had to sit down, we had some food, we had some drink, and she cooled down and started feeling a lot better, which, is just pleasant, because you don't want to see the people you care about ill. I'm trying to make the home look just a little bit more traditional, kind of very stereotypical, I guess, old country regarding Czech Republic, or anything that you imagine within the Mediterranean. So there's going to be lots of red kind of terracotta roofs and things like that. I'm going to use plenty of the ivory castle walls. Again, it's what I imagine when I think of things like Prague or even Croatia, those kind of countries. If you're lucky enough to have been to Czech Republic or like countries like Croatia, things like that, then I guess you'll have to let me know how well I've done with this build. But yeah, the temperature was a massive contrast to when we went to Italy, because we went to Italy I think a year or two before we went to Prague, and it was the first time in I think a decade that it had snowed in Rome. And so yeah, it was like minus Celsius numbers and things like that, and we got to see all the just adults and kids alike just out of school, out of businesses and things like that, not having to do work and just enjoying themselves in the snow, which was, yeah, really cool experience in of itself. Whereas, like I said, Czech Republic was on the high 30s or maybe even 40, so yeah. I did have a little period doing this build where I struggle with trying to place some pergolas, and so I do end up cutting it out just because I ended up taking a lot more time than I wanted, but you get the kind of general feel as to what I wanted surrounding the house. So I did struggle there for some reason. I think it was just the perspective was really kind of throwing me, and yeah, it wasn't going how I wanted. And I have already pre-planned both of these builds, and so I was working with reference photos that I took and then obviously dismantled everything so that I could build it on camera. But yeah, like I said, the perspective wasn't really going well for me, so I ended up having to cut out all the just faffing around. So we ended up walking around a lot of the old town within Prague, and we went to see the Prague Castle, and there was a few cathedrals and things that we visited. Again, went up one of the church towers because you got more of a observation deck like view, and I love a good observation deck. So I love seeing cities from just a high point and being able to survey a lot of the land and the city. But we saw a lot of just open style cafes and things like that, and so that's kind of the vibe I'm going with here. So there's a few topiaries and chefleras. I always cannot pronounce that properly, but I wanted to give this again just like a cafe street-esque kind of vibe, and so I ended up putting down a few cafe-esque tables and chairs and things like that. I put down a bike and a Vespa like scooter. So it still obviously gives the vibes that, you know, there are people driving around here with their various vehicles and things, but it's still a pedestrianised area, so you do have the ability to sit down and have a coffee or have a read of a book in a cafe, but, you know, people are still going about their lives. And a lot of the build is very kind of this terracotta colour, like I've already mentioned, and yeah, very stereotypical of what I think of a typical Mediterranean country. I have obviously dotted the odd topiary and things around just to give that splash of green, because yeah, these cities do have a splash of green every now and again, and it's obviously nice to see. I have really enjoyed doing these builds, and it's just nice to do builds, I guess, inspired by real places and places that I've visited, so they've got a bit of a connection to myself as well. And like I said, I've been to several countries, so if you're enjoying this kind of thing and you would like to see more of it, then let me know in the comments below, because I'd be happy to try and do more, honestly. Hopefully you think there's enough variation between the Japanese and then the Czech build that I've done here. And do you have a particular favourite out of the two? Again, let me know what you think, and if I nailed the aesthetic and the general vibe of what I was going for. Because yeah, I'd be interested to know what you guys just think of what I've done. But now we're getting to the end of this build as well, so just doing the last little touches. I love the use of the decorated pillars, just really trying to give a sense that this is part of the old town of Prague, but very traditional, you know. And I always forget that you can put stuff on top of them, but not today. So this time I'm putting a bounty lamp and then a duck on the other side, and we're pretty much done. So guys, I'm going to call today's episode here. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, as it is something a little bit different, but hopefully I managed to capture the vibes I was after regarding the Japanese street and then the Czech Republic Mediterranean street as well. If you enjoyed what I did, please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done already. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, which will be a build for Jailtown and just edging ever closer to the completion of my crime island. But until the next time, I want to say thank you very much for watching, and of course, have a good one. Cheers guys.